Hi creatives! Today we have a special guest, Mandy Marie. She's an artist and she creates beautiful abstract artworks. Mandy is a talented painter based in rural Minnesota, known for her intuitive, meditative process and her ability to turn emotions and nature into stunning abstract landscapes. And today we will talk about materials and techniques that she uses, and also about how to turn all these emotions into an artwork, how to create intuitively, and how to balance creativity and business. All these questions we are lucky to ask Mandy today, and we start in a few seconds. Also, you're very welcome to subscribe to the newsletter, and then you'll get all the highlights of these interviews with artists and designers right into your inbox. And if you have any questions, start in a few seconds. Yeah, I accepted the request. Yeah, it works. Hello. Hi, Wendy. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. Very happy to see you.
Yes.
Thank you for your time. Okay, today we will talk about abstract art, and I'm really excited because when I was going through your Instagram, you do so wonderful, so beautiful artworks. You create so lovely art, and it's very interesting to know about your creative process and also about how you run this art business, because selling artworks is also not the very simple thing to many artists. But let's start from the question about how and when did everything begin? When did you start drawing, painting?
Sure. So, art and creativity have been a huge part of my life since I can remember. I've always been interested in creating things, whether it's with paint or when I was little with crayons or really anything. So it's always been a lifelong kind of passion for me. And so I definitely feel like it's always been a part of my life and started very, very young. I remember winning coloring contests when I was little,
Oh,
so it
oh,
definitely was something I've always just kind of done.
yeah,
But as an adult, I feel like I kind of stepped away from it, as things were like busy and there was school and life and all those things, family, things like that. But I really stepped back into it about 5 years ago and started my business and just really kind of all just took off from there. And so it's been really fun. Also, at the same time, really scary because it's a business too. So there's ebbs and flows.
yeah. So you started right from the business side, or can you tell a little bit more about this?
About the business side,
Yeah. You said that like there was a little break for you in creating art, and then you just started again and started right away from the business, not just like painting for yourself. What does it
yeah.
mean?
So I just started posting my artwork on Instagram, just kind of sharing it with the world, just having fun with it. I never really thought that it would turn, into a business by any means, but it kind of just took off and it just became something really fun, something that I became passionate about and still am passionate about. And so it's been a lot of fun. It's been a very interesting journey. So I just started posting things. People started commenting that they liked my work and they wanted to purchase it. And so from there, just started a website, just started selling things. It was kind of the attitude of just start and worry about the rest as it kind of comes up. So then I started educating myself with books and just different online resources, things like that, just to get it going and running.
It sounds for me like at the beginning, the business side also was more like intuitive, and you started slowly with posting, and because you have high demand on your artworks, you start to sell and then building the website and all these things, right?
Yes, absolutely. Everything from the business side to the actual creative side, it's all intuitive and really just listening to what it is that my soul is kind of calling to. So it's definitely an intuitive
Mm-hmm.
process. Obviously, with business, there is some analytics with that, and you do have to be organized. So it can't all be about intuition and intuitive like feelings. But yes, um,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a little bit of both.
Um, can you describe a little bit how it looks like now? Your day, like an artist, like the business owner.
Sure. Sure. So, now there's just a lot of things that kind of happen throughout the day. For me, I do a lot of my creative work at night. So I spend a lot of my energy at night doing all of the creative process because that's when I feel the most tuned into my intuition, if you will. So I feel the most creative at night, and I go through the process of creating the artworks and kind of posting things. As of right now, I do just a lot of YouTube videos and things like that. So there's some creativity happening there. Um, and so that's kind of when the creative action is happening. And then also, I have a lot more free time on the weekends to really kind of dig in, spend several hours at a time doing that. I also have another job, so then it kind of
Oh,
becomes, like it's a lot of extra work to kind of make the two things happen at once.
what kind of job?
So I work in social media. I'm actually a social media manager. And
Ah,
so
wow.
that's kind of where the connection is there too. So a little bit of both.
Wow, that's amazing. Um, okay, about creative process. Do you work in your studio? What materials do you use? Just to walk us through this, how the magic happens.
So I love working with inks, both water-based and alcohol ink. So I do a little bit of both. And I also use some natural pigments as well. So I'll go out and I'll collect different materials from nature, whether that's berries, flowers, rocks, and then use that in my process as well. I also like to use synthetic pigments as well. So there's some, brighter colors that are happening there because I absolutely love color in any way that I can kind of use that. The beautiful thing about working with alcohol inks is they have a lot of undertones. So again, there's more color and more things to kind of play with there too. And so that's why I like working with that medium, but I definitely like mediums that are very fluid, have a lot of movement, and allow for a lot of just expression and kind of intuitive play. So there's a lot of creativity there where it's kind of childlike and you just get to have fun.
When I look at your wonderful reels showing how you work with liquid art materials, it looks fascinating and it looks simple, but as I know, it's not simple at all.
No.
Do you remember how have you started? What was the very beginning? Maybe you can give some tips for artists who want to try this medium.
Yeah, absolutely. I think working in any fluid medium, it's just to continue practicing and continue trying. There's going to be a lot of failed attempts. I know my first few pieces were definitely not something that I would be proud of now, right? But at the time, it was like, oh, okay, like I'm figuring this out. And so it's definitely just to start, have fun. I believe working with inks in particular, especially alcohol ink, I think it's 50% luck, 50% technique, right? So, like, you're going to learn the techniques to kind of manipulate, but you'll never really fully control them in the way that you might with acrylics or oil, and things that you can kind of manipulate more with a brush. So, it's definitely just starting and trying different things. Watch a lot of videos, just see what's available out there, get some inspiration from people, and then just intuitively dive in and just have fun. That's kind of how I feel about working with this medium, is it's just an opportunity to have fun, and to let go of perfection, because it's really easy to get caught up in the perfection of just everything. And so this is one way that you can kind of just let go and have fun.
And what kind of canvas is it better to use with liquid materials?
So surface wise, you can use just about anything. I think I use canvas. I use Yupo paper, which is, a synthetic paper made from plastics. I use mineral paper more, probably. Well, actually, I probably use that the most next to canvas. So mineral paper is made from rocks, and so it's really cool, and it just kind of has that fluid feel to it. When you're using alcohol ink, it's best to stick to mineral paper, like Yupo paper or synthetic paper like that, or canvas. if you're going to work more with like watercolors, things like that, you can obviously get any type of watercolor paper and have fun there too. So
Mhm.
lots of options. You can also work on glass even.
Oh.
So lots of options there too.
Do you need any foundation to cover the canvas?
So with a canvas, you can use something if you want to, but you don't have to. I do a little bit of both. So sometimes it's nice just to put down some gesso and have like that very nice fluid kind of movement happening, or you can just use raw canvas as well, which allows the canvas to kind of soak up the ink. So it just kind of depends on which ink you're using. If you're using water-based ink or an alcohol ink, you might, kind of change up your preferences, but I would suggest just playing until you find the right surface for
Mhm.
you, because what works for me might not work for the next person.
Yeah, of course. But it's really interesting to know about your experience. And I really, actually, I don't understand how it works. How does it work with the glass? Because it's very, it can't absorb the liquid material. How
So
can
when
I?
working with glass, I would stick with the alcohol inks,
Mhm.
but you can definitely use like a hair dryer to kind of heat or like speed up the process, but it will dry and adhere to glass or ceramic or anything like that. So it does work. It's a little different, but it does work.
Mhm. And how to start? Okay, I have liquid paints and the right canvas. I experimented a little bit on some pieces, but if it's very intuitive artwork, and I definitely don't have any plan and or sketch, or maybe you make do you prepare any sketch before you start the big canvas? No.
No, I don't sketch. I don't really plan out really much of anything. It's just my process doesn't work that way. I've tried it
Hmm.
before and it just doesn't work to sketch it out or have a plan. I usually just lay the canvas or the paper down, whatever substrate, surface I'm working with. And then I just begin by adding paint to the paper, right? So it just kind of evolves from there. I don't really have like a plan
So.
in mind. Usually, maybe I'll have like a couple of colors picked out
Mm.
or an idea of what colors I might want to use, and then that may shift as the colors are, on the paper, and I see something that maybe isn't
Mhm.
working or needs to be adjusted, and so that's
And
kind of how the process goes.
And how long does it take? Is it a quick process, or do you need to wait after each layer?
Each painting, it can vary. Sometimes I can finish a painting in less than an hour, and sometimes it can take a couple of days because it'll dry and I'm just not happy with it and I need to set it aside and come back to it when maybe I'm feeling a little bit more inspired creatively to kind of finish the piece too. So it can take a couple of days. Some of the larger paintings will take multiple days to do just because I'm working in stages as I'm going across the paper. So it kind of depends. But yeah, I can do a lot within an hour most often, which is nice at night when you're kind of like short on time. You can do things rather quickly.
Yeah, that's great. 1 hour for a big canvas. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, but not always. Like the larger paintings take much longer.
Mhm. And what about colors? Do they change a lot after they dry?
They can sometimes, sometimes as the color is drying. If you're working with alcohol inks, especially the drying phase or as the ink moves across the page, some of those undertones can kind of appear, and it might look slightly different from when, you finished painting and you think it's going to be, the way that it is, but it isn't always. So yeah, it can change a little bit.
Mhm. I also saw in your videos that you add some kind of, it looks like spices or something like this, of sand. What is it?
So usually that is either synthetic pigment or it's also it can be natural pigment. So it can be like different things that I've gathered or collected in nature. So yeah.
Yeah, and what does it mean to you? Do you feel like kind of connection with nature when you gather it out there? Can you share a little bit more about this meditative process of creating, and what does it mean to you, this process?
So in terms of nature, I feel like nature has a big impact on what I'm creating. It has an impact on my energy, and where I'm at seasonally. So often I'll pick colors that might be closely connected to the season. So like in the fall, I kind of gravitate more towards fall colors. In the winter, they definitely feel a lot more cooler. In the summer, it's very bright, very vibrant, things like that. So I feel like the seasonal change impacts the color just because I'm watching and seeing things outside. I live in an environment where we have all 4 seasons. Winter's a little bit longer than the rest of the seasons, but we definitely have those seasons. And so that definitely impacts the color choices. I also feel that nature can, at times, depending on what I'm doing or where I'm at, impact um, the color choices that I make, in the sense that if I'm like out hiking or if I'm at the lake or something like that, I might start pulling more of like the blues and browns and greens just from nature and the things around me too. And so that can have an impact. I love being by water. I think that that plays a role in the fluidity of how things are made with fluid materials. So I think there's just a big connection with that. Also, when my energy is at its high, it's in the summer, and I feel like I'm creating even more in the summer than I am during the other times of the year.
Do you have any special rituals before you start drawing? Maybe you turn on the music or have a walk in nature, meditation, anything like that?
No, nothing that's like a habit or anything like a ritual of any sort. But I do find that I feel the most inspired after I've been outdoors walking. And so I find myself gravitating towards the canvas a little bit more than I would otherwise.
When your beautiful works are ready, what is the next step? Do you take photos or maybe scan them? Because then you sell them. But what exactly do you do to sell them? Share with us, please.
So I often sit with my artwork for a little while just to see like if it's something that I'm like passionate about, or if it's something that I would hang in my own home and like enjoy it. For me, the painting is all about the feel. So like, how does it feel? How do I feel about it? So I do sit with it for a while just to kind of see if it's something that I feel is, something that I want to put up on the website or something that I want to make available for people. And so the process for that is just, like I said, kind of sitting with it for a little bit. But then next stage is, if I feel good about the piece and it's something that I do want to share with the world, then I start taking photographs of it, lots of different angles. I'll stage it maybe a few places sometimes, just kind of depends on the size of the painting and everything like that. But yeah, I often will go to the photograph stage, and then from there, I'll make sure that it looks good, maybe do some slight edits. I don't like to do too much of like a color correction or anything like that. I want to make sure that we, have something that's nice to share, but also still meets like what people are expecting when they receive the painting. And so I'll do a little bit of editing on the computer there, and then I'll get everything kind of loaded into the website. So writing descriptions, letting people know what it's about, how it came to be, and then I'll get it posted on my website and then start drafting emails, getting up some information on socials if I feel inclined to do that. And then it's ready for the world.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you do everything by yourself, or do you have an assistant? No, by
Yeah, right now I
yourself.
do everything by myself.
Uh, how do you plan it? Because it sounds like there's a lot of work. How do you have a schedule or something?
Yes. So one of the things that I feel is kind of like my superpower is that not only am I a creative, but I'm an organized creative, which usually I don't really hear those two things going hand in hand. So I'm really lucky in that regard. But I definitely have a planner system, where I keep track of everything that needs to be done, could be done, should be done, things I shouldn't be doing for right now. And I kind of have this like laid out planner for that. And then I kind of schedule my, week and days accordingly so that I know, what to do when. Um, I also live in an environment where it's not always sunny, and I do use the sun to my advantage when I'm taking photos. So there's some planning that comes in there too, with like looking at the weather, and there's all sorts of things that are happening. But I feel like definitely staying organized with the planner is key, to keep everything on track.
Yeah, I can imagine. Another question I have is about packaging and shipping because your canvases are pretty big, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage that? Any tips or tricks?
So my preferred way to ship something is to actually take it off the stretcher and then roll it up and ship it rolled, would be my preferred, and then have the customer have it stretched and ready
Mm.
that way. After a certain sizing, that's like my preferred method. And I would say anything kind of over 40 by 60 is better to kind of do 40 by 60 inches. Sorry, I'm talking in US sizing. But yes, and then I have it rolled and shipped. Otherwise, if it's anything less than that, it's definitely using like wood crates kind of work a little bit better. Like making your own like kind of wood crate is a little bit easier to do than shipping it in a box. I've found that you can run into some interesting shipping issues, right? Where you're shipping it in a cardboard box. So
Do
that's kind of
do you also ship internationally?
I have shipped artwork internationally. Most of those have been paper forms. And so I've been pretty lucky with that. I've had one issue with something trying to make its way to England that didn't quite make it. So had to redo a piece there in the past. But yeah, it's interesting. It can be a little tricky.
Yes, I can imagine that sometimes the challenges and issues. Can you give any examples or tips of what to do in this situation? Because I know that can stop many artists just from start shipping their artworks because you never know what can happen with the canvas or print. If you can tell us a couple of stories, I think it can help others to go over this fear, maybe.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that I learned really quickly working with inks and the materials that I use is definitely having the right um, packaging supplies so that when you are packaging it, that you're doing it with the utmost care because things will get damaged in shipping. So just be aware of that. Like just be open to the fact that things will get damaged. And when that happens, it's really good customer service to really work with your client and really figure out what steps they want to take and what works for them is kind of the approach that I've had. And so, with the situation of the package never arriving in England, it got lost in shipping. And then by the time it was recovered, it was severely damaged and there was no fixing it. Um, the client that I was working with was a lovely client and was willing to have me make another painting with the same colors, knowing that it wasn't going to look the same, right? Because none of my paintings really ever look the same, but making it look as close to that original as possible. And then worked through the process, shipped it out, and ended up making the second time. The second trip ended up working out, but the first one, not so much. But again, it was just really having a really good relationship with the customer and working with them and having that good customer service. I also had another package that went to Australia and it didn't, when it arrived, some of the packaging ended up getting stuck to the painting. And so it kind of damaged the painting a little bit. And so then we worked through a process there where, again, they were able to kind of pick the little bit of packaging that was stuck to the painting and it worked out for them and they were fine with it, but I was willing to make another painting for them. And so again, it's just some things can happen. I would definitely invest in, like I said, the materials that help with shipping. But for me, it was, I can't remember the type of paper. It's not coming to mind for me, but it's like a glossy, almost like a waxed paper, but isn't waxed paper that you can lay on top of the painting before you ship it or before you roll it so that it doesn't stick to the paper.
That sounds really stressful. I'm happy that you managed to deal with all these cases. Okay, I hope nothing like that will ever happen in the future. Okay, my next question, I forgot. It was it was so stressful to listen about damaging your artworks. About social media, yeah, right. You sell your works on your website, but as I understand, you get all the clients from social media, right? Or not?
I get a lot of clients from social media that reach out via, whether it's a DM or email or something like that. Usually they've found me on Instagram or Facebook or something where they're like, I like this particular work. I would love to work with you. And or sometimes they just purchase directly through the website.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your work on Instagram or other social media? How do you plan it? Do you have any content plan? Do you think about what you are sharing, when, and do you have any goals there?
Sure. So I treat social media very much the same as I do like with the business side of things and the art process itself. It's very intuitive for me. So if I'm not feeling creatively inspired by using social media, then I won't for a while. If I'm really into like the creative process, then I might not use it for a while. And showing up authentically and the way that I want to show up. And so within the last couple of years, I've taken a step back a little bit from Instagram and social media, not because I don't like it. I've just been really digging into the creative process and learning new techniques and spending more time investing in myself that way. And so I tend to take on a lot of different creative activities or adventures, things to do to really keep myself creatively inspired. And so sometimes I don't use social as much, like right now. But then other times I use it very steadily and I have things scheduled out on software to just kind of auto publish things for me, just to get kind of that information out there. Kind of just depends on how I'm showing up at the time. And I know that doesn't work for everyone. And I know some people feel the need that they need to post like every single day. And when you're doing that, you will build an audience, you will grow an audience when you show up every single day. But if you find that to be really draining on your creativity, then think about like, okay, like how else do I want to show up in the world and what else do I want to do? Um, so I kind of ebb and flow, just kind of depends.
How do you create your video content for Instagram? For example, do you use a tripod? Do you film the whole process and then cut something? Or maybe you have the idea of the video first and then film something right to this idea. Just it's interesting to know because reels, artistic reels can be very different, and it would be wonderful to know about your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes I will make a reel if I see something on social media where I'm like, ooh, I really like that. And I feel like I could use that to my advantage, right? Like I can make something with that sound or that look or that template, something like that. So I use social media like that way and finding things that I would like to make that, would also work. So I do take a lot of B-roll, and so using like a tripod is fine. You don't have to spend a lot of money to get started. So if any of your followers are watching this that are new and haven't really started or are afraid to, just invest in a cheap tripod that you can attach your phone to. It doesn't have to be like a really expensive camera or anything like that to get going. Because I mostly use my iPhone and that's it. And I'm okay with that. And I'm okay with what it looks like when it's done. I do a lot of editing in Instagram, just using their editing tools, or sometimes I'll use InShot, which is an app that you can record and kind of speed things up, things like that. And then I use different kind of features within InShot. So that's kind of my favorite app to use outside of just using Instagram to kind of create something. Um, and I do record a lot of the process, while I'm painting. Like I said, just collecting a lot of B-roll and then finding ways to kind of mash it all together to make it work and make it cohesive.
Me too. I also use InShot. I really like it. Okay, so you create really beautiful videos, but what else? Do you create stories, or I don't know, how often do you communicate in DMs? And just because you work in social media, as you told before, I think you have a very professional view on this part of your business. This is why it's really interesting to know what is important, in your opinion, for an artist who wants to gain audience and to sell artworks.
So the best thing to do if you want to get your work like noticed on social media is to pay attention to social media trends. Listen to the things that are being marketed on each of the social media platforms, right? So Instagram is really good about sharing like, hey, these are the things that we are giving people more attention for. So if that at the time is reels, then make more reels if you feel inclined to do it again. Like I want people to understand, like definitely make it feel authentic to you. Don't force yourself to do something, because when you start to force it, I feel like people realize that or recognize it in the work. So just really seeing what's kind of trending really helps. And then going from there. So if you need to make carousel posts or some sort of story to stay engaged with people, you can. I don't do a lot of stories where it's like me talking to the camera. That's just not something that I'm always comfortable with doing. So I just might not show up in that way very often. And if I do, it might be closer to like I'm selling like a huge collection or something like that, which I haven't done in a while. But um, those are kind of some of the ways that you can show up. I feel like using sites like Canva are really great for creating different social media style posts. So if you do want to get a little creative with things, or if you want creative assets, that's a really good way to show up as well. And Canva can be, you can use the free version or you can pay for it. So, I mean, there's some options there as well, which I think is helpful.
Thank you very much for sharing. And do you use the newsletter?
Yes. So having a newsletter is also important to have, and definitely building your email is one of the best things that you can do. Um, Email is one of those things that is basically something that you get to own. I'm sure you guys have heard that everywhere. There's tons of people that talk about that, but you definitely quote unquote kind of own that, right? Where it's like not something that can disappear, especially as you think about like apps that can go away at any time. You know, like if TikTok disappears in January, for the United people in the US anyway, that's something to kind of consider as you kind of promote yourself, is to try and get people onto an email list. I personally think like for like what I like to use, I like to use Flowdesk. I think that they're really easy, intuitive to use in terms of like an email format, but you don't have to use something through your website. I know for a while, like I've done things through the website that I use and just kind of send out emails that way too.
Yeah, I use the Flowdesk. It's the best thing that I use for newsletters. It's really very intuitive and the design is beautiful, but I had to switch to another one because of some other technical reasons, but it's really great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And you mentioned that you sometimes film yourself also for social media, but it's quite not so comfortable for you. Uh, Maybe something helps you uh, to do it anyway, because for many artists it's impossible to start filming yourself. How was it
Just
for
show
you?
up. You got to show up. I think the more you do it, the more comfortable you kind of get with it. I think that's really all you can do, is just kind of keep fighting through that nerves, fighting through that energy. Um, that's the best advice that I
Yeah,
have.
just try and continue the practice, right? The same as with drawing and painting. Also, you mentioned collections, that create collections. Is it any difference for you to create a single work or work on the big collection? And also, when you sell artworks, is there any difference between a single and collection?
Sure. So collections tend to be a little bit more challenging for me because I paint so intuitively that my color palette is always changing. So it can sometimes be a little bit more challenging to create a cohesive collection for me, that, or at least a collection that feels cohesive in my opinion, right? So that can be a little challenging if I don't always want to stick to the right color palette. So that's where I don't do collections a lot, but if I do, it's trying to create one that's a little bit more cohesive. But collections are a little different in that I'm creating multiple pieces that I want to, sell as a unit, and it requires a lot more lead up in the marketing sense as well, because then it's the quiet kind of drip of like showing a little bit of each painting, showing a little bit of the process. And so there's quite a bit of a lead up to then letting people know that it's going to be this big drop on a specific day. And so for me, that takes a lot of energy, and it isn't always the best use of my energy. So that's why I kind of haven't done it, because it's something that I just realized wasn't something that intuitively worked well for me. Doesn't mean that I won't do it again in the future, but it's just kind of something that doesn't work as well. Whereas when I do one painting at a time, it allows me to create that piece, to market that piece as it's kind of happening, and then put it up and make sure that people know that it's available.
And what about participating in exhibitions and galleries? Do artists need it nowadays to market and sell your artwork successfully?
I don't feel like you do necessarily. I haven't. It's not something that I have any interest in doing either. Like that's just not a direction that I ever really took. It doesn't mean that it won't happen or that I won't give it a try. It just hasn't been anything that has really spoke to me or something that I would like to do. I know artists though that love doing, exhibitions and galleries and showing up at different fairs and things like that. And that can work as well too. I think to get noticed and maybe would happen faster if you did some of those things. It's hard to say. I think every artist has their own journey and path to take, but there's options there. But again, I don't think you have to because obviously I don't. So.
Mhm. Yeah, that's wonderful to know. That's great. I think that it also can block someone to, okay, I have to expose, I have to find a gallery, contact them, which can be really overwhelming. And it's wonderful to know and see such a great example that you market and sell your artworks without any galleries.
Mhm.
That's great.
And I will say, when I started my business, I wasn't working in social media. I actually started working in social media because of my art business. So you don't have to be a social media manager or anything like that to sell your artwork, because I wasn't a social
Mhm.
media manager at the time.
Mhm.
It's just something that I became really good at. So just give things a try. Get out there, even if you feel like you're not really good at it. It's okay. Just keep posting, keep trying new things because you can find other ways to market yourself, and it doesn't have to be using a gallery or anything
Mhm.
like that. Just yourself and your phone.
What top three advices would you give to beginner artists who would love to sell their originals?
Mm. Really figure out kind of like who you are as an artist and what your art means to you. I think that when you know that, it becomes easier to kind of market yourself, investigate your market, look at other people so that you can kind of see what they're doing and how they're showing up. Because then that can give you some kind of like creative insight as to how you could market your artwork too. So I think looking at other people would be my second tip. And third, hmm, I don't know. Really get on social media. I think is still good. I still think it's good to show up on social media. Like I said, you take breaks. It doesn't have to be perfect, but getting in front of people is going to be important. However you feel that works for you. So
Mhm.
maybe not getting in. Maybe the third one really is just like getting in front of people. However you want to do that. If you want to do that via a gallery, via art shows, via social media, via whatever, like just get in front of people, and
Yeah,
really step outside the box.
that's true. That's really very important. Lastly, looking back, what would you tell your younger self when you first started this journey?
Mm. Don't give up. Like just keep going and have fun with it. Um, this entire process for me has just been fun, and that's what I want it to be. Is I mean, yes, of course, there's a little bit of heartache there every now and then, but I mean, just having fun is kind of the goal.
Thank you so much. That was very helpful, and you shared with us so many insights. Thank you so much, and I'm happy that we managed to do this interview. Sorry that I postponed it.
No, that's totally great. I was so happy. This was so fun, and it was great to connect.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Okay.
and we wish you a lot of inspiration and more beautiful works because they're really very beautiful and inspiring. Thank you, Mandy. Have a
Oh,
nice
thank
day.
you.
Yes, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Bye.
Bye.